She tells you she hates him. She posts quotes about toxic men on social media. She goes to therapy to process the damage he caused. She dates other men to prove she's moved on. But late at night, when the world is quiet and her defenses are down, she still checks his Instagram, still wonders who he's sleeping with, still feels her body respond to his memory in ways that shame her into silence. You think time heals all wounds, but some wounds aren't meant to heal. They're meant to remain open, raw, aching, with the kind of pain that keeps her connected to the only man who ever made her feel completely alive. He was everything society told her to avoid: emotionally unavailable, selfish, cruel in casual ways that cut deeper than intentional violence. He cheated without apology, lied without guilt, disappeared for days without explanation. He treated her like she was disposable, while making her feel like she was essential. And that contradiction broke something inside her that can never be repaired by men who treat her well. She met him when she was still young enough to believe love was supposed to feel safe, before life taught her that safety was the enemy of passion, that predictability was the death of desire, that the men who protected her heart were the same men who bored her body. He arrived like a storm in her world of gentle rain, and she mistook the destruction for excitement, the chaos for chemistry, the pain for proof that what they had was real. He didn't pursue her the way other men did. He didn't compliment her beauty or promise her forever. He barely noticed her at first, and that indifference made her desperate in ways she didn't understand. She found herself working harder for his attention than she'd ever worked for anything, changing herself to fit his preferences, sacrificing her own needs to accommodate his whims, and every small moment of his approval felt like salvation from a hell she didn't know she'd been living in. The first time he hurt her, she told herself it was an accident. The first time he cheated, she blamed herself for not being enough. The first time he made her cry herself to sleep, she convinced herself that love was supposed to hurt this much, because nothing that felt this intense could be anything less than destiny. She learned to interpret his cruelty as passion, his indifference as mystery, his betrayal as evidence that he was too powerful for conventional morality. Her father was absent, in the particular way that teaches daughters to crave men who withhold love until it becomes a prize to be won rather than a gift to be received. Her mother stayed married to that absence, modeling how women should accept emotional starvation as the price of having a man at all. She learned early that masculine love was conditional, that feminine worth was negotiable, that the men who mattered most were the ones who made her fight hardest for their affection. So, when he showed up with his casual cruelty and devastating charisma, her nervous system recognized him as home, not a healthy home, but the only kind of home she'd ever known, a place where love was earned through suffering, where attention was purchased with self-destruction, where being chosen meant being willing to lose yourself completely in someone else's gravitational pull. He became her drug of choice because he provided exactly the kind of intermittent reinforcement that creates the strongest psychological addiction possible. Days of neglect followed by moments of intense connection, weeks of emotional cruelty, punctuated by nights of overwhelming passion, months of wondering if he loved her, interrupted by declarations so powerful they erased every doubt, every fear, every rational thought about whether this relationship was
When he was
destroying
cruel,
her. She told herself he was protecting his heart because he'd been hurt before. When he cheated, she convinced herself it was because she wasn't giving him what he needed. When he disappeared, she decided he was testing her commitment, seeing if she loved him enough to wait through his absence. She became a translator of his toxic behavior, turning every act of betrayal into evidence of his complexity, every moment of cruelty into proof of his depth. The other women in his life weren't competition, they were validation. Every girl he cheated with confirmed that he was the kind of man other women wanted, which made being chosen by him feel like winning a prize rather than accepting scraps. She didn't hate the women he betrayed her with. She envied them because they got to experience his attention without the burden of trying to keep it, without the exhaustion of constantly earning what should have been freely given. She learned to find beauty in her own destruction. The tears he caused became evidence of how deeply she could feel. The pain he inflicted became proof of how much she could endure. The sleepless nights became romantic suffering, the kind of beautiful agony that poets write about, that makes ordinary love seem shallow in comparison. She mistook emotional chaos for emotional depth, psychological damage for psychological sophistication. When he finally left, when he chose someone else or simply got bored with the game they'd been playing, she didn't feel relief. She felt incomplete, like he'd taken parts of her with him that she'd never get back. Not just her heart, but her capacity to feel anything as intensely as she'd felt for him. Not just her trust, but her ability to be impressed by men who treated her with basic human decency. The good men who came after him felt like pale imitations of real masculinity. Their kindness felt weak compared to his cruelty. Their availability felt needy compared to his indifference. Their emotional intelligence felt feminine compared to his brutal honesty about not giving a damn about her feelings. They loved her in ways that felt safe, and safety felt like death to a woman who'd learned to associate love with danger. She tried to hate him. She told her friends stories that painted him as a monster, herself as a victim, their relationship as a cautionary tale about toxic masculinity. But even her anger carried desire. Even her hatred was a form of worship. Even her attempts to demonize him revealed how completely he still dominated her emotional landscape. Years after he'd walked away, in therapy, she learned words for what he'd done to her: narcissistic abuse, love bombing, and devaluation. Intermittent, she memorized the clinical terms and thought understanding the psychology would free her from its hold. But knowledge isn't the same as healing, and healing requires letting go of the pain that connects her to the only man who ever made her feel like she was worth destroying herself for. She dates other men now, good men, men who call when they say they will, who remain faithful, who treat her with respect and consideration, men who love her consistently instead of conditionally, who offer partnership instead of domination, who want to build something stable instead of creating beautiful disasters. And she's bored, not just sexually, but existentially, like she's living in black and white after experiencing life in colors that don't have names. Her body remembers his touch in ways that shame her into silence. Not just the sex, but the way his indifference made his attention feel like a religious experience. His cruelty made his rare moments of tenderness feel like miracles. The way his emotional unavailability made every conversation feel like she was being allowed into a sacred space that he protected from everyone else. She compares every man to him, and they all fall short, not because they're worse men, but because they're different kinds of men. They offer her security instead of excitement, predictability instead of mystery, love instead of the intoxicating cocktail of desire and pain that she still associates with real passion. They want to cherish her, and she wants to be consumed. They want to protect her, and she wants to be conquered. At night, alone in bed with men who love her, in healthy ways, she closes her eyes and remembers him, not the pain he caused, but the aliveness she felt in that pain, not the tears, but the intensity that produced them, not the betrayal, but the moments between betrayals, when she felt like the only woman in the world who could handle loving someone so dangerous, so powerful, so completely beyond the reach of ordinary feminine influence. She follows his social media from fake accounts, studies photos of his new life, analyzes his posts for hidden messages about whether he ever thinks of her. She tells herself it's curiosity, but it's really hope. Hope that he misses her the way she misses him. Hope that what they had was as unique for him as it was for her. Hope that somewhere in his heart she still occupies the same sacred space that he occupies in hers. When friends ask why she doesn't hate him, she gives answers that sound evolved, healed, mature. She talks about forgiveness, about learning from the experience, about how hating him would only hurt herself. But the truth is simpler and more disturbing. She doesn't hate him because hate would require accepting that what they had was wrong, and accepting that it was wrong would mean acknowledging that the most alive she's ever felt was in a relationship that was slowly killing her. She checks his horoscope. She drives past places they used to go together. She keeps photos, hidden in folders, on her phone that she tells herself she'll delete, but never does. She saves songs that remind her of him, reads books he recommended, watches movies he introduced her to. She's built a shrine to their destruction and called it moving on. The men who love her now don't understand why she can't fully commit, why part of her always seems to be somewhere else, why her passion has limits that theirs doesn't. They don't know that she's already given her deepest love to someone who treated it like garbage, and that experience taught her that real love isn't gentle or kind or safe. Real love is volcanic, destructive, transformative in ways that leave you permanently changed. She wants to love again the way she loved him, but she can't access that level of intensity with men who don't threaten her the way he did. She wants to feel again the way she felt with him, but those feelings only emerge in relationships that damage her the way he damaged her. She's trapped between the safety she needs and the danger she craves, between the love that's good for her and the love that made her feel most like herself. When she's honest with herself, in moments when the truth breaks through her carefully constructed narratives about healing and growth, she knows she would go back to him tomorrow if he asked. Not because she's weak, but because what they had was the closest she's ever come to feeling complete. Not because she enjoys pain, but because the pain he caused felt more meaningful than the pleasure other men provide. She would rather be destroyed by him than cherished by anyone else. She would rather cry herself to sleep missing him than fall asleep peacefully in someone else's arms. She would rather live with the uncertainty he provided than the security other men offer, because uncertainty kept her alive in ways that safety never has. And she's beginning to understand that she'd rather be half dead from loving too much than fully alive from loving too little. The women who haven't experienced this kind of love think she's damaged, broken, addicted to toxicity, but they don't understand that some forms of love are so intense they ruin you for anything less. Some connections are so deep, they become part of your DNA. Some men claim so much of your heart that there's nothing left for anyone else, even after they're gone. She knows he's not good for her. She knows he hurt her, betrayed her, treated her like she was replaceable. She knows that going back would mean accepting a life of beautiful suffering, of constant uncertainty, of loving someone more than they'll ever love her back. But knowing doesn't equal not wanting. Understanding doesn't equal not needing. Healing doesn't equal forgetting. He was the first man to show her what she was capable of feeling, and that knowledge ruined her for men who inspire less. He was the first man to make her feel small and powerful at the same time, and that paradox became her definition of what love should feel like. He was the first man to prove that she could survive losing everything, and that survival became her secret source of strength. She will spend the rest of her life comparing every man to him, and they will all be found lacking, not because they're lesser men, but because they're safer men, not because they love her less, but because they love her differently, not because what they're offering isn't enough, but because what he offered was too much, too intense, too complete to ever be replaced by anything healthier. The man who hurt her, cheated on her, made her cry every night, didn't just break her heart. He showed her what her heart was capable of. He didn't just damage her capacity to love. He revealed the depths of that capacity. He didn't just cause her pain. He taught her that she could transform pain into meaning, suffering into beauty, destruction into the raw material for rebuilding herself into someone stronger. And that lesson, that terrible, beautiful lesson, is why she will never stop loving him. Because he didn't just take from her. He gave her something no healthy relationship ever could. Proof that she could feel everything, survive anything, love beyond reason and logic, and self-preservation. He gave her access to the deepest parts of herself, even if accessing those parts nearly destroyed her. She loves him, not despite the damage he caused, but because of it. Because the damage was evidence of the power he had over her, and being powerless in the face of that much masculine energy felt more feminine than she'd ever felt before or since, because the pain was proof of how much she was capable of feeling, and feeling that much made her more alive than she'd ever been. The woman who stops loving the man who destroyed her is the woman who never really loved him at all. But the woman who can't stop loving him, who carries that love like a scar that never fully heals, who spends her life trying to recreate what she had with him, and failing because what they had was unrepeatable. She's the woman who learned what love really means. And once you know what love really means, everything else feels like settling. Maybe she'll find peace with a gentler love, a safer connection, a man who treats her the way she deserves to be treated. Or maybe she'll spend her life haunted by the ghost of someone who proved that the deepest love isn't gentle or safe or deserved, but dangerous and devastating and worth every tear it costs. Either way, she knows something most women never learn, that there are forms of love so powerful they become part of who you are, so intense they change your cellular structure, so complete they make everything else feel incomplete. And knowing that, knowing what it feels like to love like that, is both her greatest treasure and her deepest curse. The algorithm knows why you're here. It knows what you recognize in these words. It knows which category of man you are, the one she's trying to forget, or the one who can never make her forget. Maybe that recognition will set you free, or maybe it will just confirm what you already suspected about the woman lying next to you. Dreaming of someone else